So an interesting consulting project I just read from Deloitte & Touche indicates that about the average hotel loyalty member has about 3 hotels that they're actually using. How do you get them to tip to Marriott versus Hilton or something else? What do you have to do to make them move from using 3 separate hotel loyalty programs to using just one?
I should talk about people first, just to make sure we do it. I mean, clearly you need to deliver a good experience, and that means both the quality of the product that is being stayed in, as well as the service experience. And I think in part because of our history of taking care of our folks, we do deliver a good service experience generally. It's not perfect always, and we're constantly measuring and trying to make sure we continue to improve.
So in addition to global culture, there's also sort of demographic culture. So let's talk about millennials, and I'm sure you're hiring in the thousands. How has Marriott adapted to perhaps different expectations, different needs and desires of the millennial generation?
How many millennials are tired of hearing us talk about millennials? I'm tired of it. I graduated from high school in 1976. And I was probably a couple of years beyond the true revolutionary ages, but too often this millennial conversation turns into we're the old establishment types, and that was not who we were. We were someplace totally different, and every time I see a picture from that era, I think, my God, our taste was bad as well. We had a year ago a session in Miami with our leadership from around the world to do a number of things, but we did a innovation exercise where we sent the team out. There's about 60 people, I suppose, 60 our 60 most senior people essentially. We sent them out into Miami to see a bunch of startups and cultural influences and other things, to do a sort of Shark Tank like thing. And we came back and we had them present to millennials to basically judge their ideas. And we had 5 members of that panel, and when I went out and talked to them afterwards, every one of them said, "Don't call us millennials. We're sick and tired of it." And the fact of the matter is they are as different from each other in many respects as generations are from each other. And we're crazy to think that anybody between the age of 20 and 35, which is a massive range, is somehow going to be monolithic in the way they think about things. Now, having said that, I think there are trends which, even though I am a long way from being a millennial, I sympathize with many of those trends. I want a lively food and beverage experience. I'm much more inclined to even if I'm traveling alone, to want to be with other people, rather than in my room, sitting at my desk and eating a room service menu. I want my technology available instantly. I don't want to have to think about how it works. It better be blazing fast. I want the experience to be unique. So I don't want every hotel to look alike. I don't want every restaurant to look alike. I want to be able to touch and feel the local culture. I want to be able to touch and feel the local food. I don't Instagram, but many do, including folks in our generation. They want this to be a shareable experience, worthy of being remembered. I don't want to wake up and go to a meeting and have somebody say, "Well, where did I stay?" and have to stop and think, okay, where was I last night? Because I can't place the memory of the hotel or where I ate last night because it was just like the place I stayed the night before. And so all of those influences, I think, can and often are described as appealing to millennials. But they appeal to some millennials, and they appeal to many of the rest of us. And so those are the kinds of changes we're making. And so we've got, of course, we're doing things in the technology space, but we've got new brands, Moxie, which is an economy-focused brand, small guest room, not luxurious, not high level of service, but a bar-centric lobby with life in it and sort of whimsy throughout the hotel. That'll be fun. We've got a new brand called AC, Hotels by Marriott, which we brought in from Spain, also lifestyle, but very much a European design sort of flavor. And in the ACs, you're going to get an experience of tapas in the evening, and you're probably going to have the Iberian hams and some other things for breakfast, which are very quite distinct from other things that we're doing. And so those are the kinds of changes we do. I mean, you still obviously need to teach the finance and business rules and principles, and so that people can understand that. But we live in an era in which change is faster, and in which you've got whole parts of our vibrant U.S. economy, global economy, that are sitting there saying, how do I disrupt that industry? How do I turn the model on its head and do something that is profoundly different? And they're always coming at it with technology first.
So why don't we talk a little bit more about disruption? So tell us a little bit about the disruptors to your industry and how you're trying to react to those.
Well, I think the disruptor that people think of first for the hotel space is Airbnb. But I would talk about two others as well. One would be online travel agents, which have been in place now for 10 to 15 years. Expedia, Priceline, Rakuten, Ctrip in China, a number of different players. And then the Googles and Amazons and Apples of the world, who have these extraordinary technology platforms and the ability to monetize them in ways which are pretty profound. They all pose threats to us. They are different kinds of threats. I think Airbnb, because it's the newest, captures the most attention, but in some respects is maybe the least threatening. And I don't mean to suggest that they're not a disruptor and they're not relevant. They are a big player, and I think they're here for a long time. But they are increasingly getting to a place where they are selling dedicated units on their site, as opposed to the guest room in somebody's occupied home, which is where it started, as classic shared economy. That classic shared economy is a different experience than a hotel room. And some people are going to be drawn to that because it's local and it seems individual, doesn't seem institutional in any respect. And you can understand that. But when it's a dedicated unit, then it's simply a question of, all right, what's the location? What's the price? What's the product look like? How well is it cared for? That's the competition we've been having for decades. And I think in many respects, that competition, while worthy and threatening, is not a wholly different kind of competition than we've had in the past. What's different would be if the Googles of the world or the Amazons of the world said, we're going to use our power, nearly monopolistic power in their spaces, to extract as big a tax as we can extract from every business that depends on the internet for its connection with customers. And again, you think about our smaller and smaller devices. The phones now are typically what we're doing so much of our interaction through the internet on. If you search something, you're going to get a very small selection of results. And Google can make sure that they provide only results that somebody's paid them to show. And that's not a world that is good for our business to be in. It might be good for Google's, maybe for a period of time it's good for Google's. But I think that's a space that we really need to focus on. And one of the big reasons for doing this Starwood acquisition is to make sure we've got a even bigger loyalty program that really allows us to create that direct relationship with our customers.
Right. I'm hungry. I don't know about anybody else here. Let's talk a little bit about leadership. So it was interesting, your response about things that we should learn, that we should be teaching and that the students should be learning from business schools, that some of them are kind of old things that we've always held true as being important. What about leadership? How has that changed over the last 10 or 20 years from your perspective, having been a leader for many years now?
I think it is, I think we're done with the celebrity CEO. I think we're done with the CEO who barks out orders and expects an organization to follow him or her. In that era, mostly him, I suppose. Because I don't think anybody wants to be part of that team, whether they are new associates or whether they are career associates. They want to be part owners of a strategy. They want to be full adults and very participatory. They want to, I think, be able to influence the change themselves broadly. I think they want to be respected for their ideas. And none of that happens without creating collectively an environment in which people feel empowered to disagree, feel like their opinions matter. And you go back to this curiosity thing, have an interest in figuring out how to do things better. And I think one of the things that we are absolutely blessed with today is we've got a team, a few of the leaders are here, where I think broadly we respect each other enough to get in and disagree and debate and come up with something different. And that collaborativeness, I think, is absolutely essential. Now, maybe some places you can succeed without it, but I'm not sure where that would be anymore. I think one thing people often say about millennials again, and maybe this is different. When I started practicing law in 1984, we were forced to do the most god-awful work, and you never complained. And even if sometimes that work didn't seem like it was to any particular end. I think today new folks say, all right, I'll do the god-awful work, but it better be important. And if I'm doing this work day after day after day and it doesn't look like it matters to anybody, I'm going to let you know about it. And I think that's a difference, but I think that is not just about age. I think that's a difference about the way everybody's empowered through technology, through ideas, through the culture that we've got. And so they, make sure they're doing something that's worthwhile.
Hi, I'm Antonia. I'm a sophomore in the business school. My question is, what do you think are the keys to successfully manage and lead a huge number of employees, especially in terms of implementing the company values and culture?
Fundamental question, and a really important one. I think there are lots of different pieces to this. I think, by the way, I think people can be successful leaders with very different personalities. So if you study leadership, you need to be really careful about assessing the voice that you're hearing, because often that voice will say, because, maybe not in words, but subconsciously will say, because this is my personality, this is therefore the best way to lead. When if you have a different personality, those may not be the best tools that need to be used. So I think that's one important thing to keep in mind. I think the second is, particularly in an operating business like ours, where it's people intensive and we're in lots of different cultures, we have to distribute more and more authority away from the center. So one of the main tools of, I think, successfully leading a company like Marriott is empowering people all around the globe, including people in hotels, general managers, executive committees, and all the people in the hotels, but also the folks who are overseeing hotels in Europe or the Middle East or Asia. And so we've built a leadership team that includes empowered teams in Hong Kong and Dubai and in London and in Miami for Latin America who have the ability to run that business on a day-to-day basis and do not have to come out for approval all the time. So that empowerment, I think, is also a really important piece. I think the other thing empowerment does is it creates teamwork. And if it can be done in a way that is also collaborative, so people feel like they're involved in the creation process, co-creating, even bring your customers in. But when you talk first about just the leadership team, the more people feel like they're involved and that they are empowered to make decisions and make mistakes, that the decisions and the opinions they have are valued, the more engaged they'll be in their work, and therefore the bigger contribution you get. And that makes my job easier. The less I have to do. We would fail, and I think actually any big company would fail if it was totally dependent on one person or even the group of 5 to 10 senior people in a company to come up with all the ideas. The world is moving too fast and it's way too complicated for that to succeed.